Some people vanish on purpose, not because they're guilty, but because they know too much to stay visible. This is the story of a woman who saved a stranger's life in a rundown clinic at midnight, and 20 minutes later, 10 black SUVs surrounded the building. What she didn't know was that the dying man she resuscitated wasn't homeless. He was one of the most powerful figures in the military, and saving him just made her the most dangerous witness alive. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories of hidden courage and unexpected heroism, consider subscribing. The old man opened his eyes, looked straight at her, and called her by a rank she hadn't used in 3 years. The fluorescent lights in the clinic buzzed like dying insects. It was the kind of sound you stopped hearing after the first week, but tonight it felt louder somehow, cutting through the hum of the overworked air conditioner and the murmur of voices in the waiting room. The linoleum floors were cracked in places, patched with duct tape that had turned gray with age. Donated chairs lined the walls, mismatched and worn, filled with people who had nowhere else to go. This was not the kind of place where miracles happened. It was where people came when they had run out of options. Bryn Collier moved through the clinic like a shadow. She was in her mid-30s, thin and unremarkable in scrubs that were a size too large. Her hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry, nothing that would make her stand out. She kept her head down as she worked, checking vitals on a diabetic patient, prepping an IV for a man with pneumonia, adjusting the oxygen tube for an elderly woman who wheezed with every breath. Her hands were steady, her movements efficient, and she never spoke unless spoken to first. The other nurses had learned not to ask her questions. She deflected them with the skill of someone who had practiced disappearing. Dallasay was different. She was younger, maybe 26, with bright eyes and a curiosity that refused to be ignored. She had been watching Bryn for weeks now, noticing things that didn't quite add up. The way Bryn could insert an IV on the first try, even when the veins were collapsed. The way she assessed a patient in 3 seconds flat, her eyes scanning for signs that most nurses would miss. The way she never panicked, no matter how chaotic things got. Dallasay had worked in busy emergency rooms before, and she knew the difference between someone who had been trained well and someone who had been trained for war. Tonight, Dallasay was restocking supplies in the storage room when she heard Bryn's voice in the hallway. It was quiet, almost too quiet, as she spoke to a young mother who was waiting for test results. The woman was crying, her hands shaking as she held her daughter's hand. Bryn knelt down beside her, her voice low and steady, and said something that made the woman nod and wipe her eyes. Dallasay couldn't hear the words, but she saw the way the woman's shoulders relaxed, the way her breathing slowed. It was a small moment, easily missed, but it spoke volumes about who Bryn was beneath the silence. Dallasay stepped into the hallway as Bryn stood up and walked away. She caught up to her near the supply closet, where Bryn was pulling on a fresh pair of gloves. "You ever work in a trauma center or something?" Dallasay asked, keeping her tone casual. Bryn didn't look up. "Just busy emergency rooms," she said. "You see a lot." Dallasay tilted her head, unconvinced. "That's not busy emergency room stuff," she said. "That's military-level precision." Bryn's hands paused for just a fraction of a second, so brief that most people wouldn't have noticed. Then she continued working, her face blank. "I trained hard," she said. "That's all." Dallasay didn't push, but she didn't believe it either. She had seen the way Bryn moved, the way she held herself, the way her eyes scanned a room, like she was constantly assessing threats. There was something in her past, something she was running from, and Dallasay was starting to think it wasn't just a bad breakup or a failed career. It was something bigger, something that made a person change their name and hide in a place like this. The clock on the wall read 11:47 when the doors burst open. 2 men stumbled inside, dragging a third between them. He was elderly, gaunt, his skin pale and clammy. His clothes were worn, a threadbare coat over a flannel shirt, boots that had seen better days. His head lolled to the side, his breathing shallow and labored. "No wallet," one of the men shouted. "No phone, nothing." He just collapsed on the street. We didn't know what else to do. Dr. Rusev was at the front desk, his face already drawn with exhaustion. He hurried over, his hands fumbling for his stethoscope. "Get him on a gurney," he said. "Check his vitals. Someone call for an ambulance." But even as he said it, he knew there wasn't time. The man's pulse was thready, his breathing barely there. His lips were turning blue. Rusev's hands shook as he tried to assess the situation, running through possibilities in his mind. Cardiac arrest, stroke, overdose. He didn't know, and the uncertainty paralyzed him. Bryn was in the back, restocking gauze, when she heard the commotion. She stepped into the hallway and saw the scene unfolding. The old man was on the gurney now, his chest barely rising. Rusev was barking orders, but his voice had that edge of panic that came when a doctor didn't know what to do. The other nurses were scrambling, pulling equipment, prepping IVs, but none of them had taken control. They were waiting for someone to tell them what to do, and Rusev was too overwhelmed to lead. Bryn stood there for a moment, watching. Her eyes moved over the man's body, taking in every detail, the color of his skin, the way his chest moved, the faint tremor in his hands. She saw something the others didn't. Something subtle but critical, and her expression shifted. It was like a switch had flipped inside her. She stepped forward, her voice calm and firm. "Let me," she said. Rusev turned, surprised. Bryn had never taken charge before. She was always in the background, always deferring to others. But something in her tone made him hesitate. "Bryn, I don't think," he started, but she cut him off. "Move," she said, "now." The authority in her voice was undeniable. It wasn't loud or aggressive, but it carried weight, the kind of weight that came from someone who had commanded in life and death situations before. Rusev stepped back, and the other nurses did the same. Bryn moved to the gurney, her hands already working. She checked the man's airway, his breathing, his circulation. Her fingers moved to his neck, feeling for a pulse, and then she paused. Her eyes narrowed. She leaned closer, pressing her fingers gently against the skin near his jugular, and felt it. A faint crackling sensation, like bubble wrap under the skin. Subcutaneous emphysema. It was rare, easy to miss, and deadly if left untreated. "Tension pneumothorax," she said, her voice steady. "His lung is collapsing. If we don't decompress now, he's gone in 2 minutes." Dallas's eyes widened. "We need imaging," she said, her voice rising. Bryn shook her head. "No time," she said. "Get me a 14-gauge needle and prep for chest decompression." Rusev stared at her, his face pale. "Bryn, if you're wrong," he started, but she cut him off again. "I'm not wrong," she said, her tone ice cold. She didn't wait for permission. Her hands moved with surgical precision, counting ribs, finding the intercostal space, her fingers tracing the exact point where the needle needed to go. She grabbed the needle from Dallas's trembling hands and inserted it in one smooth motion. There was a hiss as air escaped, the pressure releasing, and the man's chest rose. The monitor beeped, his heart rate stabilizing. The room fell silent. Everyone stared at Bryn, their faces a mixture of shock and awe. Dallas's voice was barely a whisper. "Where the hell did you learn to do that?" Bryn didn't answer. She was already moving to the next step, inserting an IV line, adjusting the oxygen flow, monitoring the man's vitals with the kind of focus that shut out everything else. Her face was blank, professional, detached, but her hands were starting to tremble, just slightly, a tremor that only someone paying close attention would notice. The man's eyes fluttered open. It was just for a moment, a brief flicker of consciousness. His gaze found Bryn, and his lips moved, forming words that were barely audible. "Thank you," he whispered. "Lieutenant." Bryn froze. Her hands stopped mid-task. Her breath caught in her throat. She stared down at him, really looked at his face, and recognition flashed across her expression. It was subtle, a widening of the eyes, a tightening of the jaw, but it was there. She knew that voice. The man's eyes closed again. His body, going limp. The monitor beeped steadily. He was stable. Bryn pulled off her gloves, her movements mechanical. She stepped back from the gurney, her face pale. Dallas was at her side, concern etched across her features. "You okay?" she asked. Bryn nodded, but her hands were shaking now, a visible tremor that she couldn't hide. "I'm fine," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She turned and walked toward the break room, her steps slow and deliberate, like she was forcing herself not to run. The break room was small and cramped, with a single table, a microwave that barely worked, and a coffee maker that had seen better days. Bryn sat down, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Her breathing was shallow, controlled, like she was counting each inhale and exhale. She ran through possibilities in her mind, trying to make sense of what had just happened. How did he find me? Was it deliberate? Is this a test? The questions swirled, but there were no answers, only the growing certainty that her carefully constructed life was about to collapse. She reached into her locker, pulling out a burner phone she hadn't touched in 2 years. It was cheap, untraceable, the kind of phone you bought when you didn't want to be found. She stared at it, her thumb hovering over the power button. She almost turned it on, almost checked for messages, but then she stopped. If she turned it on, they would know. They would find her. She put the phone back in the locker and closed the door, leaning her forehead against the cool metal. Dallasay poked her head into the break room. "That guy's stable," she said. "Dr. Rusev wants to transfer him to County General in the morning. You were amazing out there." Bryn didn't turn around. "Just doing my job," she said. Dallasay stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "That wasn't just anything," she said. "That was something else, something military." Bryn's jaw tightened. "I told you," she said. "I trained in a busy emergency room. You see a lot." Dallasay crossed her arms, her expression skeptical. "You're lying," she said softly. "I don't know why, but you are." Bryn finally turned, her eyes meeting Dallasay's. There was something in her gaze, a warning, a plea for silence. Dallasay held her stare for a moment, then nodded. "Okay," she said. "I won't push. But if you ever need to talk, I'm here." Bryn's expression softened, just slightly. "Thanks," she said. Dallasay left, and Bryn was alone again. She sat back down, her hands still trembling, and closed her eyes. The weight of the past pressed down on her, memories she had buried clawing their way to the surface. She had left that world behind. She had earned her peace. But peace, she was starting to realize, was a fragile thing. Outside, the parking lot was dark and quiet. A black SUV pulled in, its headlights off. It parked in the shadows near the edge of the lot, far enough away to avoid attention, but close enough to watch. The driver sat motionless, his eyes fixed on the clinic entrance. He picked up a radio, pressed the button, and spoke in a low voice. "Target confirmed," he said. "She's here." A crackling voice responded. "Hold position. Do not engage. We're on our way." Another SUV arrived 5 minutes later. Then another. By the time Dallasay glanced out the window, there were 5 of them, forming a loose perimeter around the building. She frowned, her instincts telling her something was wrong. She walked to the front desk, where Dr. Rusev was filling out paperwork. Guys," she said, her voice uncertain. "You might want to see this." Rusev joined her at the window, and his face went pale. "What the hell?" he whispered. The SUVs sat in silence, their engines off, their windows tinted black. There were no lights, no sirens, no indication of what they wanted. But their presence was unmistakable, deliberate. Dallasay felt a chill run down her spine. "Are we being raided?" she asked. "Did we do something wrong?" Rusev shook his head, his hands gripping the edge of the desk. "I have no idea," he said. "But whatever this is, it's not good." Bryn was still in the break room when she heard the commotion. She stood up, her body tense, and walked to the door. She didn't need to look outside to know what was happening. She already knew. They had found her. The question was why now, and what they wanted. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and stepped into the hallway. Her face was calm, composed, but inside, her mind was racing. The front doors opened. 6 men stepped inside, dressed in dark suits, earpieces visible, their posture radiating authority and threat. They moved like a unit, synchronized, efficient. Behind them came a woman in a navy dress uniform, her face carved from stone, her eyes sharp and assessing. Commander Idris Valen. She scanned the room, her gaze sweeping over the staff, the patients, and finally landing on the break room door. Her expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Recognition. She walked forward, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. The staff watched, frozen, unsure of what was happening. Valen stopped in the center of the room, her voice calm and authoritative. "This facility is now under federal jurisdiction," she said. "No one leaves, no one makes calls. This is a matter of national security." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Dallasy looked at Dr. Rusev, her face pale. "What is happening?" she whispered. Rusev shook his head, his voice barely audible. "I don't know," he said. Valen's eyes locked onto the break room door. She walked toward it, her movements deliberate, and knocked once. "Lieutenant Collier," she said, "we need to talk." Inside, Bryn stood motionless, her hands clenched into fists. She stared at the door, her mind calculating options, escape routes, possibilities. But she knew there was no way out, not this time. She opened the door, her face blank, her voice flat. "I'm not a lieutenant anymore," she said. Valen's expression didn't change. "The Navy disagrees," she said. The two women stood in the hallway, the tension between them palpable. The staff watched from a distance, confused and frightened. Bryn's hands were steady now, her breathing controlled. Whatever was coming, she was ready. Or at least, she told herself she was. Valen gestured toward the back, away from the others. "We need to talk privately," she said. Bryn nodded and followed, her steps measured, her mind already preparing for what came next. They stopped in a small supply room, the door closing behind them. Valen turned to face Bryn, her expression unreadable. "Do you know who that man is?" she asked. Bryn hesitated, her mind replaying the moment he had called her by rank. "I have a guess," she said. Valen pulled out a tablet, tapping the screen. "His name is Vice Admiral Torsten Hale," she said. "Retired, officially. Unofficially, he oversees black-budget operations that don't exist on paper. 3 weeks ago, he disappeared. No security, no escort, no explanation. We've been looking for him ever since." Bryn's face remained neutral, but her mind was spinning. "Why was he alone?" she asked. Valen's jaw tightened. "That's what we're trying to figure out," she said. "But here's what you need to understand. The man you just saved is responsible for operations in 4 theaters. If he'd died tonight, dead man protocols would have activated. Entire networks would have gone dark. Assets burned. People killed. You didn't just save a life, Lieutenant. You prevented a national security crisis." The weight of those words settled over Bryn like a heavy blanket. She had thought she was saving one man. She hadn't realized the ripple effects, the lives that hung in the balance. Valen tapped the tablet again, pulling up a file. Bryn's file. "Lieutenant Bryn Collier," Valen said. "Navy SEAL medical attachment. 3 combat deployments. Task Force Wraith, Kandahar, 2019, Silver Star, Purple Heart, honorable discharge." Bryn's jaw tightened. "That's in the past," she said. Valen shook her head. "Not anymore," she said. "You just became visible again. And that means you're in danger." Bryn's eyes narrowed. "From who?" she asked. Valen's expression darkened. "Anyone who wanted the Admiral dead," she said. "And trust me, that list is longer than you think." Bryn processed this, her mind running through scenarios, threats, possibilities. She had spent 3 years building a new life, a quiet life, and in one night it had all come crashing down. Valen's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her expression shifting from concern to alarm. She looked back at Bryn. "The Admiral's awake," she said. "He's asking for you. If you've ever met someone who changed your life without even knowing it, share that story below. And if this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more stories like this." Bryn followed Commander Valen down the hallway, her footsteps measured, her breathing controlled. The clinic felt different now, transformed from a place of healing into something else entirely. Armed, personnel stood at every exit, their presence silent but absolute. The staff huddled near the front desk, whispering among themselves, their faces pale with confusion and fear. Dallasy caught Bryn's eye as she passed, her expression a mixture of concern and questions that Bryn couldn't answer. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The corridor seemed longer than it had been just hours ago. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows against the chipped walls. Bryn noticed details she had never paid attention to before. The way the linoleum tiles were cracked in a diagonal pattern near the supply closet. The faded motivational poster about hand-washing that hung crooked on the wall. The small water stain on the ceiling that looked like a continent she couldn't name. These details anchored her, kept her present, kept her from sliding back into the memories that threatened to surface. The room where they had stabilized the Admiral was at the end of the hall, past the supply closet and the small examination rooms that smelled of disinfectant and old linoleum. Two guards flanked the door, their faces impassive, their hands resting near concealed weapons. They stepped aside as Valen approached, their eyes tracking Bryn with the kind of assessment that came from years of training. She recognized that look. She had worn it herself once, back when she was someone else. Back when her name meant something different. Valen stopped at the door, her hand on the handle. "Before we go in," she said, her voice low, "you need to understand something. The Admiral doesn't ask for people. He commands fleets. He makes decisions that reshape entire regions. If he's asking for you specifically, it's not casual." Bryn met her gaze, her expression neutral. "I understand," she said. Valen studied her for a moment, searching for something in Bryn's face. Whatever she was looking for, she must have found it, because she nodded slowly. She opened the door. The room had been transformed in the short time since Bryn had left. Military-grade monitors lined the walls, their screens displaying vital signs in real time, with a precision that made the clinic's standard equipment look primitive. Encrypted communication equipment sat on a rolling cart, cables snaking across the floor like electronic vines. An oxygen system hummed in the corner, more sophisticated than anything the clinic normally had access to. The transformation was complete and jarring. This was no longer a civilian medical facility. It was a forward operating base. The old man lay in the bed, pale and weak. But his eyes were open. They tracked Bryn as she entered, sharp and alert despite his condition. There was an intelligence in that gaze, a depth of experience that couldn't be faked. This was a man who had made decisions that affected nations, who had held secrets that could topple governments. And right now, he was looking at her like she was the most important person in the world. "Close the door, Admiral," Hale said, his voice rough but clear. Despite the weakness in his body, there was authority in those words. The kind of authority that came from decades of command, from ordering men and women into situations where they might not come back. Valen hesitated, her hand still on the doorknob. "Sir, protocol requires that we maintain," she started. The Admiral cut her off with a look. It wasn't harsh, wasn't angry, but it was absolute. "Close the door, Commander. That's an order." Valen's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping near her temple. For a moment, Bryn thought she might argue, but military discipline won out. Her hand moved, and the door clicked shut with a finality that seemed to echo in the small space. Bryn was alone with a man who commanded operations that didn't officially exist, whose death or survival could shift the balance of power in ways most people would never know about. The silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Bryn stood near the foot of the bed, her hands at her sides, her posture neutral but ready. She had learned long ago how to wait, how to let others speak first, how to control the flow of information by saying nothing at all. It was a skill that had served her well in interrogations, in negotiations, in the countless situations where patience was more powerful than words. The Admiral studied her, his gaze moving over her face like he was reading a map, tracing familiar territory. "You don't remember me," he said finally. His voice was quieter now, almost gentle. Bryn's expression didn't change, but her mind was racing, reviewing faces, missions, briefings. She came up empty. "Sir, I've never met you before tonight," she said. Her voice was steady, professional. But inside, doubt was beginning to creep in. The way he was looking at her suggested otherwise. Suggested that somewhere in her past, their paths had crossed. The Admiral's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it had reached his eyes. "Kandahar," he said. The single word hit Bryn like a physical blow. 2019. Convoy hit an IED on Route Granite. 3 operators down. You were part of the medical attachment with Task Force Wraith. The memories came flooding back, vivid and brutal, no longer held at bay by the walls she had built. The smoke, the screaming, the twisted metal of the Humvee, blackened and torn like paper, the smell of burning fuel and flesh. She had crawled through the wreckage, her hands slick with blood, her ears ringing from the blast so loud she couldn't hear her own voice when she shouted for supplies. 3 men down, one of them trapped under the dashboard, his legs crushed. Another with shrapnel wounds across his torso, pieces of the vehicle embedded in his flesh. And the third had his chest split open, ribs visible, his breathing wet and labored. She had gone to him first because he was the one who would die fastest without intervention. She had worked on him for 17 minutes. She knew because someone had timed it later, told her during the debrief. 17 minutes of compressions, of sealing wounds that shouldn't have been survivable, of forcing air into lungs that kept collapsing. Her hands had moved on instinct, on training so deeply ingrained it became automatic. She had used everything she had, hemostatic gauze packed into wounds, chest seals to keep air from escaping, an emergency cricothyrotomy when his airway became compromised. She had kept him breathing long enough for the medevac to arrive, long enough for someone else to take over. She had never learned his name. The faces blurred together after a while, a sea of wounded and dying that haunted her sleep for years afterward. "That man was my son," the Admiral said, his voice breaking slightly on the last word. Bryn felt the floor shift beneath her, felt the room tilt. Her hand reached out, gripping the edge of the bed for support. She stared at him, really looked at his face now, and saw it. The resemblance, the shape of the eyes, the line of the jaw. Features she had seen covered in blood and dirt, twisted in pain. Now she saw them reflected in the father's face, aged and worn, but unmistakable. "He made it home because of you," the Admiral continued, his eyes glistening. "He's a civilian now, lives in Virginia, teaches history at a high school, if you can believe that. After everything he saw, everything he did, he wanted to teach kids about the past. He's married, 2 kids, a boy and a girl. The boy just turned 7, loves dinosaurs. The girl is 5, wants to be an astronaut." Bryn felt tears welling in her eyes, burning, threatening to spill over. She blinked them back, hard. "He doesn't know I'm here," the Admiral said. "He doesn't know you exist. But I do. I know exactly who you are and what you did." The weight of those words settled over Bryn like a physical thing, pressing down on her chest until it was hard to breathe. She had spent 3 years trying to forget that day, that mission, all the missions. She had left the military because she couldn't carry the weight anymore, couldn't look at her hands without seeing blood that wasn't there. She had changed her name, her life, her entire identity to escape the memories. And now they were here, standing in front of her in the form of a dying man who owed her everything. "I didn't know if he'd make it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The words felt inadequate, too small for the enormity of what she was feeling, but they were all she had. The Admiral nodded slowly, his hand reaching out. She took it, felt the weakness in his grip, the tremor that spoke of how close he had come to death. Twice now. "But you didn't quit," he said, "even when it looked impossible, even when everyone else would have moved on to someone they could save. You stayed, you fought. That's all that matters." Bryn looked away, her jaw tight. She had quit, though. Maybe not in that moment, but later. When the faces became too many. When the nightmares became too vivid, when she couldn't look at her hands without seeing blood. When she woke up screaming, when she couldn't be in crowded places without scanning for threats, when the sound of a car backfiring sent her diving for cover. She had quit, and she had run, and she had built a life where no one knew who she used to be. A life where she could be invisible, where she didn't have to carry the weight of other people's survival. The Admiral shifted in the bed, wincing slightly. Pain flickered across his face, brief but sharp. Bryn's instincts kicked in immediately. She stepped forward, her hands moving with automatic precision. She adjusted his pillow, angling it to support his neck better. She checked the IV line, making sure it wasn't kinked, that the flow was steady. Her fingers moved to his wrist, finding his pulse, counting, assessing. "You need to rest," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "You've been through a lot. Your body needs time to recover." The Admiral caught her wrist, his grip weak but insistent. His fingers were cold, his skin papery. "I need you to listen first," he said. There was urgency in his voice now, an intensity that cut through his exhaustion. Bryn met his gaze, saw the determination there. "I'm listening," she said. She pulled the chair closer and sat down, leaning forward so he wouldn't have to strain to speak. "I didn't collapse by accident, Lieutenant." The words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Bryn's mind, which had been processing medical concerns and memories, suddenly shifted gears. She felt her body tense, felt the old training kick in. The way she assessed threats, calculated risks, prepared for combat. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. But she already knew. Some part of her had known since the moment he had whispered her rank. The Admiral's expression darkened, shadows deepening in the hollows of his face. "I was poisoned," he said. The word landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading outward. Someone inside my own command tried to kill me. Bryn felt everything inside her go cold and sharp. Poisoned. The implications rippled outward, touching everything. It meant conspiracy. It meant someone with access. It meant the threat was far from over. "Who?" she asked. The Admiral shook his head slowly. "I don't know yet," he said, "but I have suspicions. And that's what makes this so dangerous." He explained in short, clipped sentences, his voice growing weaker as he spoke, but his words remaining precise. "There was an operation," he said. "Black site funding. Money moving through channels that shouldn't exist. Funding missions that were never approved, never overseen. Unsanctioned operations running in 3 theaters. People were profiting from war, siphoning funds, running operations that had nothing to do with national security and everything to do with greed. Weapons deals, intelligence sold to the highest bidder, contractors operating with no accountability. He had discovered the trail 3 months ago, buried deep in classified files that even he shouldn't have had access to. He had been doing a routine audit, something that should have been boring and bureaucratic, when he noticed inconsistencies, money disappearing, reports that didn't match, operations that didn't align with approved missions. He had started digging, carefully, quietly. He had built a network of trusted sources, people he had known for decades, people whose loyalty was beyond question. Or so he had thought. The evidence he had gathered was damning, enough to bring down careers, to trigger investigations that would reach into the highest levels of military command and possibly beyond. Generals, contractors, politicians. The web was vast and complex, and he had been slowly unraveling it, documenting everything, preparing to bring it to the people who could shut it down. The Inspector General, the Senate Oversight Committee, the right people who could act without being compromised. But someone found out. Somehow, despite his caution, despite his careful steps, someone realized he was getting close. So, they poisoned him. Not enough to kill him outright, because that would raise questions, trigger investigations, but enough to make it look like natural causes, a heart attack, a stroke, something plausible for a man his age, a man who had spent decades in high-stress command positions, something that would be sad but unsurprising. He had felt it coming on gradually. Weakness, nausea, confusion. At first, he thought it was stress, the weight of what he was carrying. But then, his symptoms worsened. His hands started shaking. His vision blurred. His heart rate became irregular. He recognized what was happening. He had seen it before, in other contexts, other operations. He was being eliminated, slowly and carefully. He had left his security detail because he didn't know who to trust anymore. If someone inside his command was behind this, then his own protection could be compromised. His driver, his aides, the people who were supposed to keep him safe might be the ones waiting for him to die. So he had dismissed them, told them he needed time alone, and then he had disappeared. He had thought if he went off the grid, if he vanished into the city's anonymous crowds, he could finish gathering the evidence and get it to the right people before the poison finished what it had started. "I came to this clinic because I was dying," he said, his voice barely audible now, "and because no one would look for me in a place like this. A free clinic in a forgotten neighborhood, where people came when they had nowhere else to go, where a man without identification wouldn't raise questions, where he could be just another body, another patient, another person the world had forgotten." Bryn understood completely. It was the same logic she had used when she chose this place. Invisibility through obscurity. Hide in plain sight among the invisible. The Admiral's eyes found hers. Again. "I didn't know you'd be here," he said. "That was luck. Or fate, if you believe in that sort of thing. But I'm glad you were. Because you saved my life when no one else could have." Bryn's throat tightened. The weight of what he was telling her was enormous, pressing down on her shoulders like physical mass. "What do you need from me?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. The Admiral hesitated, and in that hesitation, Bryn saw something she hadn't expected. Regret. "They're going to want to pull you back in," he said. "Commander Valen, the people protecting me, They're going to want you on the team that finishes this. They're going to want your skills, your training, your instincts. You saved my life twice now, once in Kandahar, once tonight. They'll see that as proof you're someone they can trust, someone who can make the difference. He paused, his breathing labored. You don't have to go, he said. You earned your peace. You served your country, paid your dues in blood and trauma. You have every right to walk away, to go back to your quiet life. I have no authority to order you, no leverage to compel you. This has to be your choice. But if you help me, if you help us finish this, a lot of good people stay safe. The people running these operations, they're not just stealing money. They're getting soldiers killed. They're compromising missions. They're putting entire teams at risk for profit. Bryn stared at him, her mind racing through possibilities, through the implications of what he was asking. She had left that world behind. She had walked away from the uniforms, the commands, the weight of lives hanging in the balance. She had built something new, something quiet. She worked in a clinic where the biggest decisions were which patient to see first, where success meant helping someone manage their diabetes or getting a child's fever down. Simple, manageable, safe. But that life was already gone, wasn't it? The moment she had saved the Admiral, the moment Valen had walked through those doors, her carefully constructed anonymity had shattered. The guards outside, the encrypted equipment, the federal jurisdiction. There was no going back to invisible. She was visible now, whether she wanted to be or not. And if she was visible, if her past had caught up with her, then maybe she had a choice to make about what she did with that visibility. Before she could answer, before she could even begin to formulate a response, the door burst open. Commander Valen stepped inside, her face pale in a way that made Bryn's instincts scream warning. Valen's hand was on her sidearm, not drawn, but ready. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the room. "Sir, we have a problem," she said. Her voice was clipped, professional, but Bryn could hear the tension underneath. The Admiral's expression hardened, decades of command experience showing in the way his entire demeanor shifted. The weakness was still there, his body still recovering, but his mind was sharp. "What kind of problem?" he asked. Valen glanced at Bryn, a quick assessment, then back at the Admiral. "Someone just tried to access your medical records remotely," she said. The words came fast, urgent. From inside the Pentagon, they used legitimate credentials, high-level access. They were looking for confirmation of your status, your location. The Admiral's jaw tightened, his hands gripping the sheets. "They know I'm alive," he said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement of fact, and the implications hung in the air like smoke. Bryn's mind shifted immediately into tactical mode, the part of her that had been dormant for 3 years, waking up with a cold, sharp clarity that was both familiar and terrifying. "If they know he's alive," she said, her voice steady, "they'll try again. And soon. They can't let him reach a secure location. Can't let him testify." Valen nodded, her expression grim. "We're moving the timeline up," she said. "We can't wait until 0600. We need to extract now. But there's another problem." The Admiral's eyes narrowed. "What problem?" Valen pulled out her tablet, showing a map with red markers. "We've detected unusual activity in the surrounding area," she said. "Multiple vehicles that don't match neighborhood patterns, surveillance indicators. Someone's watching the clinic. They're setting up for something." Bryn stood, moving to look at the map. Her eyes scanned the markers, her mind automatically calculating fields of fire, approach routes, escape vectors. "How many?" she asked. Valen zoomed in on the map. "At least 3 vehicles we've confirmed," she said. "Possibly more. They're maintaining distance, but the pattern suggests reconnaissance for an assault." Bryn's pulse quickened, but her hands remained steady. "How long until they move?" she asked. Valen's expression darkened. "Unknown," she said. "Could be minutes, could be hours. But we have to assume worst case." The Admiral tried to sit up, grimacing with the effort. "We need to evacuate the civilians," he said. "The staff, the patients. Get them out before this turns into a combat zone." Valen shook her head. "Sir, that would alert the watchers that we know they're there. Could trigger an immediate assault. Better to maintain normal operations while we prepare the extraction." Bryn's mind was already 3 steps ahead. "If we try to move the Admiral now," she said, "we'll be most vulnerable during transport. They'll hit us on the road where they can control the environment." Valen nodded. That's my assessment too, she said. But staying here makes us a static target. We're damned either way. Bryn turned to the Admiral. How stable are you? She asked. Can you survive a hard extraction if we have to move fast? The Admiral met her gaze. I'll survive whatever I have to, he said. Just tell me what you need me to do. Bryn respected that answer. It reminded her of the operators she had worked with, the ones who understood that sometimes survival was a choice you made, not a condition you waited for. She looked at Valen. We need to prep for immediate evac, she said, but we need a diversion, something that makes them think we're going one direction while we go another. Valen's eyes sharpened with understanding. What are you thinking? She asked. Bryn pointed to the map. There's a loading dock on the north side, she said, normally used for supply deliveries. If we make it look like we're preparing a convoy there, lights, movement, noise, their surveillance will focus on that exit. Meanwhile, we use the south emergency exit, minimal lights, quick transfer to a non-standard vehicle, something that doesn't look military. Valen considered this, her tactical mind evaluating the plan. It could work, she said slowly, but we'd need someone to stay with the decoy convoy, make it look legitimate. Bryn nodded. I'll do it, she said. The Admiral's voice cut through. No, he said firmly. You're the only medical personnel I trust. You stay with me. Bryn turned to him. Sir, with respect, the diversion only works if it's convincing. They know you have high-level protection. If the convoy doesn't have credible security, they won't buy it. The Admiral's jaw set stubbornly. Then we find someone else, he said. Valen's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her face going even paler. Sir, she said quietly, we just lost contact with our outer perimeter. 2 teams. Radio silence. Bryn felt ice in her veins. They're not watching anymore, she said. They're moving. The Admiral's hand reached for Bryn's arm. Get me up, he said. We're not waiting. We're leaving now. The next few minutes were controlled chaos. Valen was on her radio, issuing rapid commands, calling in all available security, establishing new perimeters. Bryn moved with practiced efficiency, disconnecting the Admiral from the stationary monitors and switching him to portable systems. She checked his IV, his oxygen, his vitals. Everything had to be mobile, had to be ready to move at a moment's notice. The Admiral watched her work, his face set with determination. The door opened and 2 more guards entered, weapons ready. Commander Valen sent us, one of them said. We're your close protection for the move. Bryn nodded, continuing her work. The Admiral needs to stay as flat as possible during transport, she said. Any sudden movements could destabilize his condition. The guards nodded, their faces professional. Understood, ma'am. Outside in the hallway, Bryn could hear increased activity. Footsteps moving quickly. Low voices coordinating. The clinic was transforming again, this time into something closer to a battlefield. She thought about the staff, about Dalasay and Dr. Rusev, and all the patients in the waiting room who had no idea what was happening. They were in danger now, caught in the crossfire of something that had nothing to do with them. Just like always, the innocent paying the price for the powerful. Valen returned, her expression grim but focused. We have a vehicle ready, she said. South exit, just like you suggested. It's a civilian medical transport van, requisitioned from a local service. Looks completely normal. We have a secure route planned, multiple fallback positions. But we need to move in the next 3 minutes. After that, I can't guarantee perimeter security. Bryn looked at the Admiral. You ready? She asked. He nodded, his face pale but determined. They transferred him to a mobile stretcher, strapping him securely. Bryn stayed close, one hand on the IV line, the other ready to intervene if his condition changed. The guards took positions at the front and rear, weapons held in low-ready positions. Valen led the way, speaking quietly into her radio, coordinating the movement. The hallway was clear, the normal clinic staff having been quietly moved to secure areas. The building felt empty, abandoned, like a shell waiting to be discarded. They reached the south emergency exit. Valen held up a hand, stopping the group. She peered through the small window in the door, scanning the area outside. Clear, she said. Vehicle is in position, 30 feet from the door. We move fast and quiet. Everyone understand. Nods all around. Bryn felt her body tensing, preparing. This was the most vulnerable moment. The transition from building to vehicle, exposed, visible. Valen opened the door slowly, and the night air rushed in, cool and damp. The parking lot was dark, illuminated only by a single streetlight that flickered intermittently. The medical transport van sat waiting, its side door already open. It looked exactly like what it was supposed to be, a beat-up civilian vehicle that no one would look at twice. 2 more guards flanked it, scanning the darkness with night vision equipment. "Move," Valen said. The guards lifted the stretcher and moved quickly across the open ground. Bryn stayed beside the Admiral, her eyes scanning for threats, her body positioned to shield him if necessary. The 30 feet felt like 30 miles. Every second stretched, her senses hyper-aware. The sound of her footsteps on concrete, the whisper of the Admiral's breathing, the distant hum of traffic on the main road. They reached the van. The stretcher was loaded smoothly, locked into position. Bryn climbed in beside it, her medical bag slung over her shoulder. The guards took positions, 2 inside the van, 2 in a follow vehicle. Valen was in the front passenger seat, still coordinating on her radio. As soon as everyone was loaded, the van started moving, pulling out of the parking lot with deliberate casualness. Not too fast, not too slow. Just another medical transport on a night run. Bryn checked the Admiral's vitals. His heart rate was elevated, stress response, but stable. His blood pressure was holding. His oxygen saturation was good. He was doing better than she had expected. His eyes opened, finding hers in the dim interior light. "Where are we going?" he asked quietly. "Secure facility," she said. 20 minutes away, if everything goes. Smoothly, he nodded. "And if it doesn't go smoothly," he asked. "Then we improvise," she said. The van moved through residential streets, following the route Bryn had suggested earlier. Houses passed by, windows dark, families sleeping, completely unaware that a vehicle carrying one of the most powerful men in the military was rolling past their homes. The normalcy of it was surreal. Bryn found herself thinking about the people inside those houses, their ordinary lives, their ordinary problems. How simple everything must be when you didn't carry the weight of secrets that could reshape the world. They had been driving for about 8 minutes when Valen's voice cut through the quiet. "We have a tail," she said. "Black sedan, 3 cars back, maintaining distance but tracking our turns." Bryn's jaw tightened. "How sure are you?" she asked. Valen's voice was certain. 100%, she said. "They've followed us through 4 turns. That's not coincidence." The driver's voice joined in. "I can try to lose them," he said. Valen shook her head. "No," she said. "If we spook them, they might escalate. Better to maintain current course and prepare for contact." Bryn's mind raced through options. They were in a civilian vehicle, lightly armed, with a patient who couldn't survive a sustained firefight. If the tail was hostile, and there was no reason to think otherwise, they had to assume an attack was coming. The question was when and where. She leaned forward. "How far to the nearest support?" she asked. Valen checked her tablet. 6 minutes to a secure checkpoint, she said. "If we can get there, we'll have overwhelming force advantage." 6 minutes? Bryn looked at the Admiral. His eyes were closed now, but she could tell he was awake, listening, processing. She placed her hand on his shoulder, a gesture of reassurance. "We're going to get you there," she said quietly. He opened his eyes, and despite everything, there was a faint smile. "I know," he said, "because you don't quit." The words hit her harder than they should have. She had quit, had walked away. But maybe he was right. Maybe when it really mattered, when lives were on the line, she couldn't quit. Maybe that part of her was too deeply ingrained. The black sedan was still there, matching their pace. Bryn watched through the small rear window, her eyes tracking its movements. Professional driving, maintaining optimal surveillance distance. These weren't amateurs. Valen's radio crackled. "All units, be advised, we have additional contacts," a voice said. "2 more vehicles have joined the tail. They're boxing you in." Bryn felt her pulse quicken. This was it. The moment before everything went wrong. Valen's voice was calm but urgent. "All personnel, prepare for hostile contact," she said. "Driver, when I give the word, you break south on Elm and push for the checkpoint. Don't stop for anything," the driver acknowledged. Bryn secured the Admiral's stretcher, making sure the straps were tight, that he wouldn't slide. During evasive maneuvers, she pulled out her medical bag, quickly checking supplies, trauma dressings, hemostatic agents, airway equipment, everything she might need if things went bad. The intersection ahead was clear, the light green. The van approached at normal speed. Bryn watched the trailing vehicles. They were closing distance now, no longer maintaining surveillance spacing. This was the moment. She could feel it in the air, that electric tension before contact. The van entered the intersection, and that's when everything erupted. A van pulled out from a side street, its side door already open. Figures with weapons. The lead vehicle in their tail accelerated hard. The driver reacted instantly, yanking the wheel, accelerating through the intersection. Bryn braced herself, her body covering the Admiral's. She heard the first shots, saw muzzle flashes reflected in the van's mirrors. The rear window spiderwebbed but held, bulletproof glass doing its job. The van swerved, taking a hard turn onto a side street. More gunfire. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. One of the guards returned fire through a gun port, controlled bursts. Valen was on the radio, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Contact, contact, we are under fire, requesting immediate support." The van's engine roared as the driver pushed it to its limits, racing down the narrow street. Bryn kept her body over the Admiral, her hands checking his vitals by feel. His pulse was racing but strong. He was conscious, his eyes wide but focused. A bullet punched through the thin side panel, missing Bryn by inches. The Admiral flinched but didn't cry out. "Stay down!" Bryn shouted, though he had no choice, strapped to the stretcher. The van took another turn, tires squealing. She could hear the pursuing vehicles, their engines loud, getting closer. The driver was good, taking corners that seemed impossible, using every bit of the van's capability. But they were in a civilian vehicle against what sounded like high-performance pursuit cars. "How far to the checkpoint?" Bryn yelled. Valen checked her tablet. 3 minutes, she said. "If we can stay ahead for 3 minutes?" The driver's voice was strained. "I'm trying," he said, "but they're faster than we are." Bryn's mind raced. They needed to slow the pursuers, create distance, buy time. She looked at the equipment around her, the medical supplies, the oxygen tanks. An idea formed, dangerous but possible. She pulled an oxygen tank from its mount, checking the pressure gauge. Full. She looked at one of the guards. "You have a flare gun?" she asked. The guard nodded, pulling one from a storage compartment. Bryn took it, her plan forming fully now. "On my mark," she said to the guard. "Open the rear door. Just for a second." The guard's eyes widened. "That's going to expose us," he said. Bryn nodded. "I know," she said, "but it might give us the edge we need." She positioned herself near the rear door, the oxygen tank in one hand, the flare gun in the other. Valen turned in her seat. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Creating a deterrent," Bryn said. She looked at the driver. "On the next straightaway. Give me 5 seconds of steady speed." The driver glanced in the mirror, saw her face, and nodded. "You got it." The van hit a straight section of road. "Now," Bryn said. The guard hit the release and the rear door swung open. Wind and noise rushed in. Bryn could see the lead pursuit vehicle, close enough to make out the driver's face. She opened the oxygen tank valve fully, creating a pressurized release, and threw it out the back. Then she fired the flare gun, the bright magnesium round arcing toward the oxygen stream. The effect was instantaneous and spectacular. The oxygen ignited in a bright, searing flash. It wasn't an explosion, not really, but the sudden wall of flame caused the lead pursuit vehicle to brake hard, swerving. The vehicles behind it had to react, creating chaos in their formation. The guard slammed the rear door shut. The van pulled ahead, gaining precious distance. Valen was staring at Bryn. "Where the hell did you learn that?" she asked. "Field expedience," Bryn said. "You learn to use what you have." The next 2 minutes were tense but clearer. The pursuing vehicles had fallen back, regrouping, more cautious now. The van raced through the night, every second bringing them closer to safety. Bryn checked the Admiral again. His face was pale, his breathing elevated, but he was stable. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded weakly. "That was impressive," he said. She almost smiled. "Just staying alive, sir," she said. "That's what I do." The checkpoint appeared ahead, a military installation with bright lights, barriers, and armed personnel. The van approached, and Bryn could see soldiers moving into position, weapons ready. Valen was identifying them over the radio, giving authentication codes. The barriers lifted, and the van rolled through into safety. The pursuing vehicles had vanished, melting back into the city. The danger had passed. For now. They transferred the Admiral immediately to a secure medical facility within the installation. Bryn stayed with him, guiding the medical team, ensuring continuity of care. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind was processing everything that had happened. The ambush had been professional, well-coordinated. The enemy had known their route, or at least had predicted it well enough to position assets. That meant intelligence, resources, and determination. Once the Admiral was stable and under the care of the military medical staff, Bryn stepped outside. The night air was cool, and she realized she was shaking slightly. Adrenaline dump, the aftermath of combat. She had felt this before, many times, but it had been years. She leaned against the wall, forcing her breathing to steady, forcing her body to calm. Valen found her there a few minutes later. "That was good work," Valen said quietly. "You saved his life again. And probably all of ours, with that oxygen trick." Bryn shook her head. "Just doing what needed to be done," she said. Valen studied her. "You're good at this," she said. "Better than good. We could use someone like you." Bryn met her gaze. "I'm not looking to come back," she said. Valen nodded slowly. "I understand," she said. "But the Admiral was right. You don't quit when it matters. Maybe you should think about what that means." Inside, the Admiral was sleeping, sedated, his body finally able to rest now that he was safe. Bryn sat beside his bed again, watching the monitors, ensuring he remained stable. Her mind drifted to what he had said earlier, about his son, about the life that had continued because she had refused to give up. She thought about the two kids she had never met, who existed because 17 minutes under fire, she had kept their father breathing. Maybe Valen was right. Maybe some things were too deeply part of who you were to walk away from. Or maybe she was just tired, emotional, vulnerable to manipulation after everything that had happened. She didn't know. But as she sat there in the quiet medical facility, watching a man who had thanked her for saving his son, she knew one thing. Her quiet life was over. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be invisible. If someone you know has ever fought battles no one else saw, honor them by sharing this story. And if these moments of hidden courage move you, we'd be grateful if you'd subscribe for more. The secure medical facility was nothing like the clinic. Everything here was pristine, sterile, efficient. White walls that gleamed under LED lighting, equipment that hummed with quiet precision. The air itself felt different, filtered and temperature-controlled. Bryn sat in a chair beside the Admiral's bed, watching the monitors display his vital signs in perfect digital clarity. Outside the door, 2 Marine guards stood watch. Down the hall, she could hear low voices as Valen coordinated with her team. The immediate danger had passed, but the threat remained. Somewhere out there, someone wanted the Admiral dead, and now they knew he had survived. Bryn hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the muzzle flashes, heard the gunfire, felt the van swerving beneath her. The adrenaline had faded hours ago, leaving her drained but unable to rest. Her body knew this state, the hyper-awareness that came after combat, when your brain refused to accept that the danger was over because it had learned too many times that danger was never really over. She stood up, stretching muscles that had gone stiff, and walked to the window. Dawn was breaking outside, painting the sky in shades of gray and pink. The door opened quietly. Valen entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Bryn without a word. They stood together at the window, watching the sun rise. The coffee was strong and bitter, exactly what Bryn needed. "Thank you," she said quietly. Valen nodded. "You did good work tonight," she said. "The Admiral is stable. The doctors say he'll make a full recovery." Bryn took another sip of coffee. "What about the people who attacked us?" she asked. Valen's expression hardened. "We captured 2 of them when they tried to flee through a checkpoint," she said. "They're being interrogated now. So far they're not talking, but we have their communications equipment, their vehicles, their weapons. Intelligence is pulling it apart. We'll find out who they're working for." Bryn turned from the window. "And what happens to me now?" she asked. Valen met her gaze. "That depends on you," she said. "You can walk away, go back to your life. We'll provide protection if you need it, help you relocate if you want. Or you can stay." "Stay and do what?" Bryn asked. Valen set down her coffee cup. "Help us finish this," she said. The Admiral was right. There's a conspiracy inside our own command structure, people profiting from war, compromising operations, getting soldiers killed. We need people we can trust to help root it out. People with your skills, your instincts, people who know what it means to serve something bigger than themselves. Bryn shook her head slowly. I left that world for a reason, she said. I can't carry that weight anymore. Valen was quiet for a moment, then she said something Bryn wasn't expecting. Maybe you're not supposed to carry it alone. Bryn looked at her. What do you mean? She asked. Valen gestured around them. You think any of us do this by ourselves? She said. Every person in this building, every operator in the field, we all carry the weight together. That's what makes it bearable. You left because you thought you had to shoulder everything alone. But that was never true. Before Bryn could respond, one of the doctors emerged from the Admiral's room. He's awake, the doctor said, and he's asking for you. Bryn set down her coffee and walked back into the room. The Admiral looked better. Color had returned to his face. His eyes were clearer, more alert. He smiled weakly as she approached. Lieutenant, he said. His voice was stronger now. How are you feeling? She asked, automatically checking the monitors. Like I got run over by a convoy, he said. But alive, thanks to you. Again. Bryn pulled the chair close. You need to rest, she said. Let your body recover. The Admiral shook his head slightly. I'll rest when this is over, he said. Right now, I need to know what happened. Valen entered behind Bryn and gave him a concise briefing. The ambush, the escape, the successful arrival at the secure facility. The Admiral listened intently, his expression growing more serious with each detail. They were well coordinated, he said when Valen finished. That takes resources, planning, intelligence. This isn't some rogue operation. This goes high. Valen nodded. We know, sir, she said. We're tracking the evidence now. We've also identified the source of the remote access attempt on your medical records. It came from a terminal assigned to Deputy Director Marcus Thorne. The Admiral's face went hard. Thorne, he said quietly. I served with him 30 years ago. Thought he was a friend. Valen's expression was sympathetic but professional. We don't know yet if he's directly involved or if someone used his credentials, she said. But either way, it's a lead we're pursuing. The Admiral was quiet for a moment, processing the betrayal. Then he looked at Bryn. I need you to do something for me, he said. Anything, she said. He reached for a tablet on the bedside table, his movements still weak. Valen helped him, and he tapped through several security screens. There's a safe deposit box, he said. Location is here. Inside is a drive with all the evidence I've gathered. Financial records, communication logs, operational reports. Everything needed to bring down the people behind this. I need you to retrieve it and get it to the Inspector General. Bryn felt her chest tighten. Why me? She asked. Why not someone from your command? The Admiral met her eyes. Because I trust you, he said simply. You've saved my life twice. You've asked for nothing in return. You're not part of the command structure, not compromised by loyalties or politics. You're the only person I'm certain they can't get to. Bryn looked at Valen, who nodded slowly. We can provide support, Valen said. But he's right. You're the safest choice. Bryn wanted to refuse, wanted to say this wasn't her fight anymore, but she looked at the Admiral, at this man who had spent his life serving, who was willing to die exposing corruption, whose son was alive because she had refused to quit in Kandahar. She thought about all the soldiers who would be put at risk if these operations continued, all the lives that would be lost for someone else's profit. She had walked away from that responsibility once. Could she do it again? She took a deep breath. Okay, she said, I'll do it. The Admiral's face showed relief. Thank you, he said. The safe deposit box is under a false name. The key is in my personal effects. Valen will get it for you. Bryn nodded. When do I go? She asked. Valen checked her watch. We have a team assembling now, she said. You'll leave within the hour. The bank opens at 9. We'll have security, but at a distance. Can't risk tipping off anyone watching. The next hour passed in a blur of preparation. Bryn was given civilian clothes, a simple outfit that would help her blend in. She was briefed on the location, the security protocols, the extraction plan. A team would shadow her, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. But the approach had to look natural, unremarkable. Just another person conducting banking business on a Tuesday morning. Valen walked her through every step until Bryn had it memorized. Before she left, Bryn returned to the Admiral's room one more time. He was resting, but awake. She stood in the doorway, suddenly uncertain what to say. He saved her the trouble. "My son doesn't know what you did for him," the Admiral said quietly. "But I'm going to tell him. When this is over, when it's safe, I'm going to introduce you. I think he'd like to thank you himself." Bryn felt her throat tighten. "I'd like that," she said. The Admiral nodded. "Be careful out there, Lieutenant," he said. "Come back safe." The drive to the bank took 20 minutes through morning traffic. Bryn sat in the back of an unmarked sedan, watching the city wake up around her. People heading to work, students walking to school. The normal rhythm of life continuing as if nothing extraordinary was happening. She wondered what they would think if they knew, if they understood that in this ordinary car, on this ordinary morning, someone was carrying the key to exposing a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of military command. The bank was in a quiet business district, an old building with marble columns and brass fixtures. Bryn entered through the front door, her movements calm and unhurried. Inside, the lobby was nearly empty. A few customers at the teller windows. Security guard by the entrance. Everything looked normal. She approached the desk and gave the false name the Admiral had provided. The clerk checked her records, verified her identification, and led her to the vault. The safe deposit box was small, unremarkable. The clerk used her key, Bryn used the one Valen had given her, and the box slid open. Inside was a single thumb drive, smaller than Bryn's finger. Such a tiny thing to hold so much weight. She placed it in her pocket, the clerk locked the box, and they returned to the lobby. The entire process took less than 10 minutes. Bryn walked back toward the entrance, her heart rate elevated but her face calm. She was halfway across the lobby when she noticed him. A man in a business suit, standing near the entrance, his posture too rigid, his eyes too alert. He was watching her. Their gazes met for a fraction of a second, and Bryn saw the recognition in his face. He reached for something inside his jacket. Bryn's training took over instantly. She moved, not toward the exit, but deeper into the bank, toward the offices in the back. Behind her, she heard the man shouting, heard the security guard reacting. She burst through a door marked "Employees Only," running down a hallway lined with offices. Behind her, footsteps pounded. She needed to get to the back exit, needed to link up with the security team that was supposed to be shadowing her. But the man was fast, trained, closing the distance. Bryn hit the back door, found it locked. She spun, pressing her back against it. The man appeared at the end of the hallway, weapon drawn but held low, concealed from the front lobby. "Who are you working for?" Bryn asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The man didn't answer. He raised the weapon. Bryn had nowhere to go. But then the door behind her burst open, and two figures in tactical gear appeared, weapons up. "Federal agents," one of them shouted. "Drop your weapon." The man hesitated, calculating odds, then lowered his gun slowly. He was swarmed immediately, taken down, cuffed. Bryn exhaled shakily. Valen appeared moments later, her face tight with controlled anger. "Are you hurt?" she asked. Bryn shook her head. "I'm fine," she said. But they knew. They were waiting. Valen's jaw clenched. "We have a leak," she said. "Someone told them you were coming." Bryn's mind raced through implications. If there was a leak in the security team, then nowhere was truly safe. The conspiracy was deeper than they had realized. "We need to get this drive to the Inspector General immediately," Bryn said, "before they have time to regroup." The drive to the Inspector General's office was tense. They used a different route, different vehicle, minimal communication. Bryn kept her hand on the thumb drive in her pocket, as if physical contact could keep it safe. Valen was on the phone, coordinating, verifying, trying to identify the leak in her team. When they arrived at the nondescript government building, they were met by a security detail that had been assembled in the last hour, people Valen personally trusted. Inside, they were escorted to a secure conference room. The Inspector General was a stern woman in her 60s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed. She listened as Valen explained the situation, her expression growing darker with each detail. She looked at Bryn. "You're the one who saved Admiral Hale," she said. Bryn nodded. "Twice, apparently," she said. The Inspector General almost smiled. "And now you're delivering evidence that could bring down a dozen high-ranking officers. You've had quite a week." Bryn handed over the thumb drive. "This is everything the Admiral gathered," she said. "Financial records, communications, operational reports. Everything you need." The Inspector General took it carefully, as if handling something both precious and dangerous. "This will trigger investigations that will take months," she said. "Possibly years. People will fight back. There will be attempts to discredit the evidence, to discredit the Admiral, to discredit you. Are you prepared for that?" Bryn thought about the question. Was she prepared? She had spent 3 years trying to disappear, to avoid exactly this kind of attention. But she thought about the Admiral's son, about Caspian teaching history to high school students, coaching soccer, living a life that existed because she had refused to quit. She thought about all the soldiers who would be protected if this corruption was exposed. She met the Inspector General's gaze. "I'm prepared," she said. "Whatever it takes." The Inspector General nodded with respect. "Then we'll proceed," she said. "I'll need formal statements from you and the Admiral. We'll need to coordinate with the FBI, with military intelligence, with congressional oversight. This is going to get complicated, but if the evidence is as solid as you say, we'll bring them down." Bryn felt something loosen in her chest. Relief. The weight she had been carrying was shifting, being distributed to others who could handle it. She wasn't alone anymore. 3 days later, Bryn returned to the secure medical facility where the Admiral was recovering. He was out of bed now, sitting in a chair by the window, looking stronger. His face lit up when she entered. "Lieutenant," he said. "I heard it went well." Bryn sat down across from him. "The Inspector General has everything?" she said. "The investigations have started. It's going to be a long process, but she thinks they have enough to make it stick." The Admiral nodded slowly. "Good," he said. "That's good." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then the Admiral said, "There's something I need to tell you." Bryn looked at him. "What is it?" she asked. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. It showed a photo of a man in his late 30s, standing with a woman and 2 children in a park. The man had kind eyes and a gentle smile. "This is Caspian," the Admiral said, "my son. The man you saved in Kandahar." Bryn stared at the photo, her throat tight. "He looks happy," she said quietly. "He is," the Admiral said. "He teaches history, coaches his daughter's soccer team, volunteers at the VA on weekends helping other veterans. He's a good man. He's alive and making the world better because you wouldn't let him die." Bryn felt tears welling up. She had carried so much guilt about the ones she couldn't save, the faces that haunted her dreams. But here was proof that sometimes, the fight was worth it. "I told him about you," the Admiral said, "about what you did that day, about what you've done this week. He wants to meet you." Bryn looked up, surprised. "Really?" she asked. The Admiral nodded. He said anyone brave enough to crawl through fire for a stranger, and then brave enough to do it again years later, is someone he needs to thank in person. Bryn wiped her eyes. "I'd like that," she said. "I'd really like that." The Admiral stood slowly, still weak but determined. "There's something else," he said. He walked to his bedside table and picked up a small wooden box. He opened it to reveal a set of military ribbons and a medal, the Navy Cross. Bryn's eyes widened. "Sir, I can't accept that," she said. The Admiral shook his head. "It's not for you to accept or refuse," he said. "It's already been approved for actions under fire in Kandahar. The paperwork got held up, buried in bureaucracy. I made sure it got pushed through." Bryn stared at the medal. She had never wanted recognition, never sought glory. But holding it now, she understood it wasn't about her. It was about everyone who had fought beside her, everyone who had trusted her with their lives. It was a symbol of something larger than herself. "Thank you, sir," she said quietly. The Admiral placed the box in her hands. "You earned it, Lieutenant," he said, multiple times over. 2 weeks later, there was a small ceremony, not public, not announced, just a quiet gathering in a military chapel. The Admiral was there, still recovering but present. Valen was there, along with the security team that had protected them. The Inspector General attended, a show of respect and solidarity. And in the front row sat a man Bryn had never met, but somehow knew instantly. Caspian Hale. He stood as she entered, his eyes filled with emotion. After the ceremony, after the medal was pinned and the words were spoken, Caspian approached her. His hands were shaking slightly. I don't really know what to say, he started. Bryn smiled gently. You don't have to say anything, she said. But he shook his head. Yes, I do, he said. You gave me my life back. You gave my kids their father. You gave my wife her husband. I think about that day sometimes, the pain, the fear, the certainty that I was dying. And then there was your voice, telling me to hold on, that you weren't going to let me go. Tears streamed down his face. I didn't know your name, he said. Didn't know who you were, but I never forgot that voice. And now I know. Now I can thank you properly. He pulled her into a hug, and Bryn felt something break open inside her. All the pain, all the guilt, all the nights she had woken up screaming. In this moment, with this man's arms around her, she felt it start to heal. You're welcome, she whispered. I'm so glad you made it. They talked for over an hour after the ceremony. Caspian told her about his life, his kids, his work. He showed her pictures, told her stories, made her laugh. His wife joined them, a warm woman who hugged Bryn and thanked her with tears in her eyes. The children were too young to understand, but they were polite and curious, asking Bryn questions about being a soldier. She answered carefully, honestly, trying to show them that service could be noble without glorifying the violence. As the gathering wound down, the Admiral approached Bryn one last time. So, what happens now? He asked. Where do you go from here? Bryn thought about the question. She had spent 3 years hiding, trying to forget. But she realized now that forgetting wasn't healing. Connection was healing. Purpose was healing. Serving something larger than yourself was healing. I think I'm going back to the clinic, she said. There are people there who need help, and I'm good at helping people. The Admiral nodded approvingly. But maybe not just the clinic, he suggested. We could use someone like you training the next generation of combat medics, teaching them not just the technical skills, but the mindset, the refusal to quit, the commitment to bring everyone home. Bryn considered this. It would mean staying connected to the military world, but on her own terms, teaching instead of fighting, building instead of destroying. I'll think about it, she said, but I'm not making any promises. The Admiral smiled. Fair enough, he said. Just know the offer stands. Whenever you're ready. They shook hands, a gesture of mutual respect between two people who had saved each other in different ways. Valen approached as the Admiral walked away. So, you're really going back to that clinic, she asked. Bryn nodded. For now, she said, those people need care, and I'm good at providing it. Valen studied her. You know you're wasted there, she said. You could be doing so much more. Bryn shook her head. I don't think helping people is ever a waste, she said. Whether it's in a combat zone or a free clinic, whether it's saving an admiral or treating someone's diabetes, it all matters. Valen smiled slightly. You're right, she said. I guess I've been in the tactical world so long I forgot that. She handed Bryn a card. My personal number, she said. If you ever need anything, or if you change your mind about coming back. Bryn took the card. Thank you, she said. For everything. A month later, Bryn walked through the doors of the free clinic. It looked exactly the same. Cracked linoleum, flickering fluorescent lights, worn chairs filled with people who had nowhere else to go. But somehow it felt different to her now. Not like a hiding place, but like a place of purpose. Dalacy was at the front desk, and her face broke into a huge smile when she saw Bryn. You came back, she said, rushing over. I wasn't sure you would. Bryn hugged her. I had some things to take care of, she said, but yes, I'm back. Dr. Rusev emerged from an examination room, his face showing relief. Bryn, he said, we've been drowning without you. Bryn smiled. Well, I'm here now, she said. Put me to work. The evening shift fell into a familiar rhythm, checking vitals, prepping IVs, holding hands, offering comfort. But there was a difference now. Bryn wasn't hiding anymore. When Dalace asked about where she had been, Bryn told her. Not everything, not the classified details, but enough. She had been helping someone who needed her. She had faced danger. She had remembered who she was. Dalace listened with wide eyes. So you really were military, she said. I knew it. Bryn nodded. I was, she said, a long time ago. And this past month reminded me why I served in the first place. Not for the glory or the recognition, But because there are people who need help, and I have the skills to help them. Dalisi smiled. That's why you're here, she said, at this clinic. Same reason. Bryn realized she was right. The location had changed, the uniform had changed, but the mission was the same: serve those who need it most. Late in the shift, during a quiet moment, Bryn opened her locker. Inside, she had taped two things. First, the photo the Admiral had sent her, Caspian with his wife and children smiling in the park. A reminder that her work mattered, that lives continued because of what she had done. Second, her old dog tags, not hidden away anymore, but displayed. A connection to who she had been, integrated with who she was becoming. She touched them both, feeling the weight of the past and the possibility of the future. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She opened it and smiled. It all was from Caspian. Just wanted to say thanks again. My daughter scored 2 goals in her soccer game today. She's fearless, just like the woman who saved her dad. Thought you'd want to know. Bryn felt warmth spread through her chest. She typed back a response. That's amazing. Tell her I'm proud of her. And thank you for sharing that with me. It means more than you know. Another text came through, this time from Valen. The investigations are proceeding well. Multiple arrests expected next week. You should be proud. You helped make this happen, Bryn replied simply. Just did what needed to be done. But she was proud, not of herself necessarily, but of what they had accomplished together. Justice being served, corruption being exposed, soldiers being protected, the system working the way it was supposed to, slowly but surely. As the night wore on, Bryn found herself standing at the same window where she had stood weeks ago, watching the parking lot. But this time, there were no black SUVs, no federal agents, no armed guards. Just the normal quiet of a city night. Cars passing by, people living their lives, the ordinary miracle of peace. She thought about everything that had happened, how saving one life had changed everything, how facing her past had freed her from it, how purpose had found her again, not in the uniform she had worn, but in the work she chose to do. Dalisi joined her at the window. You okay? She asked. Bryn nodded. Yeah, she said. I really am. Dalisi studied her face. You seem different, she said. More at peace. Bryn thought about that. She was different. She had confronted the parts of herself she had been running from. She had remembered that her skills, her training, her instincts were gifts meant to be used, not buried. She had learned that healing didn't come from hiding, but from connection and purpose. I think I found something I had lost, Bryn said quietly. What's that? Dalisi asked. The reason I became a nurse in the first place, Bryn said. To help people, to make a difference. I got lost for a while, thinking I had to be invisible to survive. But I realize now that the point isn't to hide. The point is to show up, to be present, to do the work that needs doing, whether anyone recognizes it or not. Dalisi smiled. That's beautiful, she said, and true. This place is better because you're here. The rest of the shift passed quietly. Bryn treated a child with an ear infection, checked on an elderly man with heart problems, helped a young woman who had sprained her ankle. Small things, ordinary things, but each one mattered. Each person deserved care, deserved attention, deserved to be seen. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Bryn felt something she hadn't felt in years. Contentment. Not happiness exactly, because the work was hard and the memories still hurt, but contentment. A sense of being exactly where she was supposed to be. She thought about the Admiral, recovering in his home, with his family around him. She thought about Caspian, coaching soccer and teaching history and living the life she had fought to preserve. She thought about all the soldiers who would be safer because of the investigations that were underway. She thought about the patients in this clinic who would receive care because she had chosen to stay. Ripples spreading outward from a single choice to not quit, to keep fighting, to believe that one person could make a difference. Her phone buzzed one more time. Another text from the Admiral. Just wanted you to know. The Inspector General says the evidence is solid. They're moving forward with indictments. This is really happening. Thank you for your courage. Bryn read the message several times, letting the words sink in. Then she replied, Thank you for trusting me, and for reminding me who I am. The response came quickly. You never forgot who you were. You just needed a reason to remember. Take care of yourself, Lieutenant. You've earned your peace. Bryn put away her phone and looked around the clinic. The waiting room was empty now, the night's patients seen and treated. Dalisay was restocking supplies, humming softly to herself. Dr. Rusev was in his office, finishing paperwork. Everything was quiet, ordinary, perfect in its simplicity. This was her life now, not hiding, not running, but serving, making a difference in whatever way she could, wherever she was needed. She had been a soldier once. She was a nurse now. But really, she had always been the same thing, someone who refused to quit when others needed her. She walked to her locker one last time before leaving, opened it and looked at the photo of Caspian's family, at her dog tags hanging beside it. 2 parts of her life, integrated and whole. She smiled, closed the locker, and walked toward the exit. The sun was fully up now, a new day beginning. She stepped outside into the warm morning light, and for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't afraid of being seen. She was exactly who she was meant to be. A healer, a protector, someone who showed up, someone who made a difference, someone who never quit. The clinic doors closed behind her, and she walked toward her car. Tomorrow she would be back, ready to serve whoever needed her. But today, she would rest. She would call Caspian and maybe meet his family for lunch. She would think about the Admiral's offer to train the next generation. She would consider what came next, knowing that whatever she chose, it would be her choice. Made freely, without fear, without hiding. She had earned her peace. But more than that, she had learned that peace wasn't about being invisible. It was about being whole, being present, being exactly who you were meant to be, wherever you were needed. Have you ever watched someone choose courage when walking away would have been easier? Their story matters. If this moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you believe in honoring the unseen, sacrifices people make every day, we would be grateful if you'd subscribe.